I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. She's a social researcher. If you don't know her, she's been on TED Talks. She's done at least 2 that I know of on vulnerability and shame. If you haven't looked at her TED Talks, you absolutely should check them out. One of the things she's learned in her research is that when you ask people to share stories about love, generally they share stories about heartache. When I think of falling, I think about love. And when I think of love, I think about heartache. My mom says that I'm probably the luckiest person in the world because I've fallen in love and gotten my heart broken so many times. Most people only get it once, maybe. I really hope she's right about that. So when I was in 5th grade, I fell in love with Joey. Joey was 12. He was the baseball star. I was the dugout scorekeeper girl for the team, so I got to be in the dugout with them and kept the books. And so I tried everything I could to share with Joey how much I loved him without actually saying to him, "I love you, Joey." So I would tie my little shirt up and I would giggle and I would flirt, and he asked for water and I was there with water, whatever he wanted in the dugout, yeah. I also wrote him love letters and mailed them to his house. Long love letters professing my love for him. It was only when his mother called my father and asked about the love letters, and my father then confronted me about the love letters to Joey, that I realized that Joey would not be returning the love that I was so freely given. So when I was 16, I fell in love with the bad boy at school. He was really good looking, he smoked cigarettes, he was smart, but he was kind of aloof and didn't really do his schoolwork. We had a great time together. His mom loved me, thought I was fantastic. He wrote me poetry. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. I even tattooed his name on my body. I don't recommend that to anyone, by the way, especially the younger people. So when we graduated, or when I graduated rather, and he quit school, we started falling apart. And I went to college, and I realized that I had been trying to be the person that he wanted me to be when we were in our relationship. And it turns out that I'm very good at that. I could be exactly who I thought he wanted me to be. And I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So, when I was in grad school, I fell in love with the person who was my forever. Absolutely, hands down, my forever. And we made art together, and we laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed together. We lived together for years. We did family holidays and functions together. It was perfect. And we were living in the mountains. I mean, I couldn't get better than that. We decided we were going to move to New York City. We were going to start an art company. We were going to make art together in New York City, the big city. So I was going to go and set everything up. And so I moved to New York City, and I got an apartment for us, and I got furniture, really good furniture. And I got a job, and the day that she was supposed to move, she called and said, "I have fallen out of love with you. I am not moving to New York City." Ugh, heartbreaking. So, she also got a tattoo on my body, by the way. I did not get her name, but I got a part of an Emily Dickinson poem. The poem is very short. Love is anterior to life, posterior to death, initial of creation, and the exponent of breath. A little reminder for me. So about 6 years ago in Philadelphia, I met the most wonderful man. But I was older and I was wiser and I was a little more cautious this time, and I kind of held my fall for a little bit. And then of course I absolutely fell madly and deeply and passionately in love with him. And he is wonderful. And then I started doing that thing that I do where I try to be the person that they want me to be. And so I started doing that really well. And I realized that I didn't want to do that I wanted to be truthful and confident and honest. And it turns out that that is really hard. It is really hard to be honest about who you are and what you need and ask for what you need. It's much easier just to pretend pretend to be whatever somebody else wants you to be. It's like being an actor. What I have realized is that the falling is the easy part, and the standing is the hard part. Standing for what you believe in, who you are, what you need in your life. But when you are in a relationship with someone who is willing to pick you up when you fall and help you stand back up again and be the person that you want to be, that is my definition of true love. And I absolutely am committed to falling over and over and standing back up over and over with this man. So I'm pretty happy about that. Thank you.
My first really bad fall so far happened when I was either 7 or 8 years old. And it was because I was active and a tomboy, and I liked to do adventurous things. We lived on a street that was still dirt at that time, but the WPA was paving our street. It was about a little over a block long, and it was in the second year of it being paved that this fall happened. We loved the WPA because it entertained us all the time. There was always something going on. There were trucks going up and down the street, and they were putting in new curbs, and they were building storm sewers, and they were paving the street. And my brother particularly had a wonderful time because he spent hours riding on the running board of the boss's truck. Mike McGuire was a very nice, big, old, jolly Irishman, and he loved my brother Teddy. Teddy was about 10 at the time, and he was a little fat kid and had big cheeks, and he was just friendly, and he talked all the time. So Mike would let him stand on the running board, and Ted would go up and down the street as Mike went from gang to supervise the work. So there was a lot going on, and Fatty Ossiker was the one who built the storm sewers. Now, Fatty Ossiker was a rather rotund gentleman. He was a bricklayer by profession, and they didn't have to measure the storm sewers because he just built it around himself. He was the same size as the storm sewer, so the crew, he would show the fellows where to dig the hole, and they would dig a hole down about 6 feet, and then Fatty would go down with a little ladder that he carried with him, and he would just brick in that area and build it around himself. And so he was working on the storm sewer that was just up from our house on Riverside Avenue. And when they finished working on Friday afternoon, Fatty would climb out of the storm sewer, and he would take a sawhorse and put it across. And then he would take a 2x6 board and just put the board up across the hole so that nobody would fall in, hopefully. And then he left, and well, on a Saturday afternoon in the summertime, I was laying in the glider on the front porch reading, and I heard some kids, and I looked over, and there was a whole gang of kids standing around that storm sewer that Fatty had left on Friday afternoon. And I thought, oh, I wonder what's going on. So I put my book down, and I went on over to see what was going on. Of course, I was a very curious child, and I was a real tomboy. And most of the kids standing around there were boys, and they were daring each other to try to walk up that board across the yawning chasm. And none of them wanted to do it, but I did. And I would do anything. I had 2 older brothers, so I needed to do anything that I could do to outshine the boys. So they were hemming and hawing, and I said, I'll show you how to do it. And I started to run up the board. Well, I got about halfway up, and it was fun. And I was there, and I started to bounce. And I looked down, and there's the yawning chasm below me. And all of a sudden, the board turned. Down I went, splat onto the bottom of the storm sewer. And I must have hit my head somehow and was knocked out, because I didn't hear the kids calling to me, and I didn't move. And the kids thought that I was dead. And they didn't want to get blamed for it. So they all left and didn't tell anybody that I was down in the bottom of that pit, dead. Did I really die, or did I survive? I'm not going to tell you, because you'll have to come back next month, because I'm going to tell the story to the theme coming home.
Okay, usually I get up here and tell something super funny, but this time's a little different when I tell you guys about something that both literally and figuratively scarred me. So I was around during preschool. I was about 4 years old, and that's when things started falling into place for me. Like, since preschool is not exactly very heavy on the studying, you can try to find, it's some time to find socially who you are. And all the other little girls, they were very girlish. They were the kind of girls who would put on fake weddings and stuff like that. I was a more adventurous type, and I was the only one in the school who liked running around, along with my friend Isabel. So what happened to me, the fall that I took with my friend Isabel, was when I was at school one day, and I had just watched my first adventure movie, which was Indiana Jones, and I wanted to know what was on the other side of the fence that was kind of like the exit to the preschool. So there was a brick wall, and it was covered with vines, which would come up to a chain link fence, and then if you climb above that, you're free from the preschool. So what Isabel and I did was we climbed the wall, and we used the vines as the ropes. And Isabel was a gymnast, so she was able to get over there really quickly. She was able to get up there really fast. And it took me a little while, so she was saying, oh my God, Mickey, it's taking you so long. You want to be free, don't you? And so I kind of did. But I got up there, and what we didn't know was in the middle of the wall, there was a rusty nail sticking out of the wall, the middle of the wall. And so I put one hand up on top of the wall, let go. I fell, it's a 6 feet wall, and I was a 3 foot tall preschooler. I cut my knee on the rusty nail. Luckily, it was not that long, but it was deep. I had to go to the emergency room after that. And luckily, Isabel was a really great friend to me. She carried me back to the preschool. She told the teacher what happened, who called my parents, who took me to the emergency room. And that's when it kind of hit me. Isabel was the greatest friend I have ever had so far, and she was 3. She was a year younger than me, and she always displayed the best friendship that I have had so far. And this might come as a bit of a shock to you guys, but I was always the weird kid. Anyway, so that's when I figured out who I was supposed to be, and everything started falling into place for me. I wanted to be the best friend that anyone could ever have, and with Isabel as my role model, I was just recently told that I was the best friend that my current best friend has ever had, and that's all thanks to me falling into place, both literally and figuratively, at a gymnasium in preschool. Thank you.
You've already heard the stories of help, I'm fallen and I can't get up. That happened to me. I didn't know what would prepare me for tonight because this just happened last week. And I had another story to tell, but this was just too good. I woke up in the middle of the night and I just couldn't get back to sleep. So I thought, well, I'm going to go in the kitchen and see if I can get a glass of milk or something so I can go back to sleep. I got down there and I got down, way down to the bottom of the refrigerator because I had a glass already poured down there. And I got way down so low that I lost my balance. And I'm going back and forth, and pretty soon I'm on the floor, sitting on the floor. Lucky I had a big behind because I landed on my elbows and my behind. I could not get up. I live in a senior residence, and we have those little things you hang around your neck that says help, you know, when you push the button and somebody comes and gets you. Well, it's hanging on the head of my bed. So I'm trying to get out of there, and I'm pushing and pulling, and I had a long silky nightgown, and I kept trying to move, and I turned over and I grabbed onto a chair. I couldn't get on my knees, I couldn't get on the other, and I'm struggling back and forth. And I thought, where can I go? How can I get help? I know I can go to my office and get the telephone, and then I'll call the desk, and they'll send somebody up and help pick me up. Well, 1 hour later, I'm pushing and pulling, and I'm on the floor, starting from the kitchen, and I'm grabbing onto the table, and I pulled the tablecloth off, and I grabbed onto another chair, and I knocked the chair over, and I couldn't make any headway, and every time my nightgown kept getting stuck under my legs, and I thought, it was like an inchworm trying to get someplace, and everything was stopping me. I got down further and further, and I finally got into where my desk was, but I couldn't reach the telephone. So I grabbed something off the desk, and I kept swatting until the telephone came falling down. I was able to get that, and then I didn't know which number to call. So then I had to get the directory, and I'm swatting and getting the paper off my desk. It was like a path of destruction all the way from the kitchen to my office. Pretty soon I was able to call, and he said, I have to call 911. I said, I'm not hurt, I just need to get up. He said, I'm sorry, those are the rules. I said, okay, but tell him I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm not hurt. I was kind of, but I didn't want to admit it. There was a pillow sitting on my chair, my desk chair, so I pulled the pillow down on the floor, lay down, put my hands over my stomach, and waited for help. All of a sudden I heard a knock on the door, and they said, we're coming in. Mrs. Sanders, where are you? And they turned on the lights, and here's just stuff scattered all over, all the way from the past, from the kitchen to where I was, and there I was lying with a pillow under my head. Now the pillow was to just brace my back for the desk chair. And the men who came to help me said, how did you go to the bed and get a pillow and get back here? I said, well, it's a long story, I tell you. Just help me get up. So they helped me get up, and they said, are you all right? I said, just let me walk a little bit, just a little bit. And I walked, and they said, are you sure nothing's broken, everything's fine? And I said, yes, everything's fine. They said, what would you like to do next? And I said, go to bed.
I don't think of falling as falling because I've never taken a bad fall before. I'm not very adventurous, but I think falling is, about the season fall. So, but I mean, who knew that there would be a holiday for candy? I mean, like, parents hate giving your kids candy and all that stuff like that, so who knew? But, well, we all have those costumes that, we all love, and, I was just gonna talk about how I love Halloween and stuff like that. But my first costume, my first Halloween, I was a sunflower. My second, I was a pink poodle, and I had a ginormous pink puppy head over my head in a long pink suit. I looked adorable. When I was 3, I was this fairy, and I had face paint all over my face. Then I was Supergirl. I don't remember what I was when I was 4 and 5. I don't remember. I remember first grade and up to now, but and then I was a gypsy, and then I was a zombie, and then this year maybe a little rabbit. But just the thought of fall makes me happy, and this year I'm especially very, very happy because for Thanksgiving I'm going to the Bahamas, to Atlantis, with my best friend and his mom and my mom. So, and then every year at Thanksgiving we go up to Ohio. Really, my family is from Ohio. They're not from Hawaii or California. So, yeah, we go up to Ohio and we go to this country club and they have the best mashed potatoes in the whole entire world. Like, I mean, raise your hand if you love potatoes more than anything. Okay, that's not a lot of people, but okay. And then, and my great-grandpa used to be, the owner and stuff like that. But, I just love seeing my family and all of that. And Halloween and, the candy and, I don't know, I just love fall. But, this isn't really my story, but it's just something, I have a thing about fall and thing that happened last week. It's a fall, kind of. So, but last week, me and my friend, we were babysitting their Saint Bernard, her uncle's Saint Bernard, and my friend Riley was taking a shower upstairs, and I was downstairs, and I was, sitting at the dog's level, and I was petting its back, and I kissed his back, and he took me down to the floor, and he made a big groove in the back of my ear, and I didn't want to say anything. I ran upstairs and, it was just numb. I didn't really feel anything. And this St. Bernard was like 9 months old. It was up to my stomach. And I go upstairs and I feel my ear and there's like all this, I had blood on my fingers and I was freaking out because I thought there was like a hole in my ear. And so I go upstairs and it was just like this giant groove and it looks like a Y. It's shaped like a Y. It's really weird. But that's the worst fall that I've ever taken. I've never really taken a serious fall or anything like that. And I just love the season. So, yeah, I just love fall and Halloween. And like I said, who knew candy would be holiday?
How y'all doing? Great. Happy fall, happy Halloween. Before you start my time, I actually had a story that I was going to tell about falling in love. Can't do that. Had a story that I was going to tell about falling into a sewer. Can't do that. Not fully into a sewer, but I actually got my foot stuck into a sewer pipe and thought I was going to become the next Baby Jane. You know, remember, not Baby Jane, the baby, what was it, you know, that kid that,
Yeah.
Baby Jessica, yes.
Yeah.
I was stuck in it for like 45 minutes. It was really terrible. It was a great story. Not as good as yours, though. So I'm going to tell something different. Now you can start my time.
Okay.
All right. So I grew up going to and then later working at this United Methodist camp. And later on when I was in college, photography ruined my GPA. But before I knew that would happen, I decided to spend part of my spring break going back to my camp to capture some pictures at this beloved camp. And so I was traipsing through the woods up to the waterfall that was my wonderful spot when I was working at camp. And I was with my friend Emily. We were looking for the most perfect nature scene. And we were above the waterfall, and Emily, she was about 50 pounds lighter than me. I was a big girl at the time. And she just goes traipsing across this log. And I put one foot on the log, and I was like, this is not going to support me. And so I decided I would just put my foot down in the water. The thing was, I spent most of my time at camp in the summer when the water was a lot lighter. And this was the springtime when all the snow was melting. So before I knew it, the water swept me away. So here I am, just trying as hard as I can to grab onto a rock or something to keep, and I have 2 cameras on my back in my backpack, and I'm being swept away, and I'm about to go over the top of this waterfall, and all I can focus on is the look on my friend Emily's face, which is a combination of just like shock and horror and kind of this like, what are you doing? So you would think that I would be concentrating on, you know, saving myself, but actually all I could think about was that look on Emily's face. Now I did finally grab onto a rock and stop and get myself up on top of it right before I went over this 20-foot waterfall. But that look on Emily's face reminded me of something that happened 9 months previously during summer camp. So I have to tell you, I'm one of those people who tends to rise up through the ranks of any kind of professional structure because I'm trusted. Not necessarily because I should be, because I have the seeming, you know, aspect of being a trustworthy person. So the summer before, I was the assistant director at camp, which meant I had a lot of free time on my hands so that I could run off with the lifeguard that I had a crush on and smoke cigarettes in the woods. And so we had done just such a thing on this one evening. We were at the waterfall. We were sitting there, looking at the beauty of the waterfall, and I had such a crush on this guy. He was beautiful, and he was younger than me, which was completely inappropriate, but that's another story. So, as I'm sitting there pining for this young gentleman in the waning light, and we're looking at the waterfall, smoking our cigarettes, all of a sudden there's this sound that starts at the top of the waterfall, and it kind of goes like this. And I look up at the beginning of the sound, and it looks kind of like this brown, tan rag falling from the top of the waterfall into the base of the waterfall. And then up from the bottom of the splash stands this teenage deer. I mean, it wasn't a grown-up deer, and it wasn't a baby deer, but it was somewhere in between. It was a teenage deer. And then, in the same way that Emily had that look on her face, the deer looked at me directly in the eyes. And we had this moment of animal-human contact. It looked at me kind of like, wow, I can't believe that just happened, and I can't believe you saw that. I mean, this deer was like embarrassed for itself in the way that a teenager would be. But it kind of looked at me like, I'm kind of glad you saw that, but then it just looked at me like, I'm gonna go now. And it turned around and it walked into the woods. And the lifeguard and I, we looked at each other in complete bafflement, like we couldn't believe we'd seen this happen, and the deal was okay, and we just laughed really hard and were amazed. And right at that moment, I mean, I did mention this was a United Methodist camp, right? This Bible verse went through my head. It's from Habakkuk. Did you know that there's this book in the Bible, Habakkuk? It says, "The Lord gives me the feet of deer so that I can walk upon high places." And I just thought to myself, how lucky I was that I got to see that happen. Thank you.